Hello, and welcome to Clamp, the Creating Living and Making podcast. As always, I'm your host, Adam Mackey, and joined, as always, is Morley Kurt.
Hello.
And Grant Alexander.
Hello!
So, boys, what's been going on this week? What's in your clamps, Morley?
So, right after we finished recording the show last week and moved into the after show, Grant and Adam gave me one of those ideas where I hate getting late at night because I'm so excited about it that I can't fall asleep. So they ruined my sleep, but it's okay because they gave me a great idea, which was to finally make a shop tour of my tiny apartment workshop. So did it the day after we recorded, posted it the next day, and it was super fun. And I might do a similar thing for moving into the next apartment. I have some other projects in the works that might work into that as well. So I'm trying to kind of figure out how to integrate the entire storyline. But yeah, thank you guys. That was a fantastic idea that you gave.
Well, you're welcome. And I really think that you should do one the second you move in as setting up, and then a year later as what I've learned.
Yeah. I think it'd be great to see your thought process of setting up a new, bigger studio. But I love how much you made it less about this is my space and more of this is what I did to make up for my loss of space, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
The whole video was showing ideas you can do to take up space. Yeah,
and I think that's kind of part of my reluctance when you first gave me the idea in the after show was I don't really know how much there's to show. I mean, it's literally just a standing desk, 3D printer enclosure, my workbench, and a bookshelf. I'm what am I touring? But then I kind of realized that I could use it as a vehicle to sort of have a retrospective on all these things I've made in small spaces and do a little more showing, not telling.
He says, and then puts out a 30-minute video.
Yeah, so that was good fun. And then the project I mentioned last week, the Dream whiteboard, is a little bit on hold just because we're in this weird time of year where a lot of other people, not us, are taking time off. So it's a little tricky to get glass for it at the moment. I've contacted a few people. I thought this glass shop was open, but then it turns out they opened for 2 days at the beginning of this week and then closed again until next week, which is really annoying. And I don't know, I was looking on Facebook Marketplace. I was I might as well just get a glass cutter, see if I can find some frosted glass. But a piece of frosted glass is not the easiest thing to find on Facebook Marketplace. So a bit annoying, but I have a bigger project in the works for the new apartment. So I kind of switched gears to focus more on that. Did a bit of woodworking, got some new tools. So yeah, it's all fun. It's good because I was worried that with this time, I wouldn't be able to do anything because I wouldn't want to start anything amidst moving. But I'm finding good ways to stay productive amidst this all.
Never worry about that because there'll always be something that you can or cannot do. I've found that in my life. It's always well, if I do this, then I'll have unless it's if I do this, it'll I'll need to let it cure for 48 hours and I'm moving in 24. That seems like a silly idea. But if it's oh, I'll only be halfway done cutting all these 2x4s. Well, yeah. And when you open it up, you'll be halfway done. You should be excited about it. Right?
Yeah. You're totally right. And I'm realizing that as I move more and more, the amount of stuff you can squeeze in. But I guess amidst all that too, it's also created some cool new opportunities. I was going for a walk last week and saw this wrought iron gate with this really cool twisted wire stuff, and it reminded me of this Alexander Calder exhibition I saw in Montreal. If you don't know, Alexander Calder invented the mobile and did all this really amazing kind of industrial art. He started with sort of twisted wire art and then moved into some different sort of sculptures. Really, really interesting guy. I think any maker would get a kick out of his life story, because he's kind of like the guy who invented the geodesic dome, the buckyball. Can't remember his full name. A similar like artist engineer character as that. So anyways, it reminded me of like, oh, this is something I've been wanting to try for a while. So I just got a bunch of like wire coat hangers and started playing around with that, which has been really fun, and getting some good advice to people as like easier wires to use, because like while wire coat hanger is very accessible and it's nice to sort of reclaim that material, it is very stiff and not the most user-friendly thing to like turn into finished shapes with just pliers. So yeah, it's been kind of like a varied, interesting week.
It's interesting.
So that reel has popped up. Sorry, you go.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that reel has popped up on my Instagram feed so many times.
Ooh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it has like 3,000 views now.
Yeah, crazy. So speaking of, in my clamps this week, I made my first reel, which was interesting. So I made a little shelf for my baby's little playroom, and made it into a reel. It's going to be a full video as well, and you can't see it. You can't see it in the reel, but there is an iPad with a clock going.
Yay!
So 1 hour builds is coming back how it was.
Yes.
But yeah, it was interesting. I couldn't work out how to use Instagram Reels properly, so I actually just made the video in my normal editing program and then uploaded it to Instagram.
I think that's the best way to do it.
I think so too, because it was so much easier to be able to cut to the music and everything than it is with how Instagram does it. And I thought there would be issue with me taking the music, editing in, and then I thought I'd have to like find the song and try and line it up properly. But as soon as I uploaded it, it knew what song it was and let me do it.
Oh, that
was really good to know.
It identified the song?
Yeah, it identified the song, and it even added my reel to that song's like playlist.
That's really
thing.
cool. I had no idea it did that.
Yeah,
that is the tip of the week.
Yeah.
Should we like start a little tip, like singular tip of the week segment? If you guys want tip of the week segment, contact us, DM at Clampcast, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that.
How about we can do that if we don't have a review for Morley to read?
I love it. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so that's all I've been working on. What about you, Grant?
Well, I in honor of apparently January 11th is Sketch Day, World Sketch Day. So apparently in honor of World Sketch Day, I finished my leather sketchbook cover and got that done. It turned out, I think, really great. Just some veg tan, and I salvaged the fact that I glued way too much. Apparently, I forgot glue squeeze out exists. But
see, that's the great thing about using contact cement is you don't really have to worry about squeeze out.
Totally. So I've got an order done up on my local leather supplier, Zeitworks or something. I can't remember exactly what the name is, but they're like, there's no Tandy in Ottawa. It's a singular. Like they've been in business since the 1800s. And I've got a cart full of stuff, but because the contact cement that I want is water-based, because I want to be like Ethan Carter, I can't get it mailed to me because it's below freezing. So I have to go and pick it up, and everything's on lockdown, and I don't.
So that holds
that is probably also something you can get at your hardware store. The low VOC contact cement. It's also water-based, I think.
Also closed.
So. Did they not do curbside pickup?
Right. So does I don't leave the house. I haven't, other than walking the dog, I don't leave the house. So I'm like a weirdo. I'm like a hermit.
Take the dog for a very long walk.
Yeah. No, I could totally do the order. I'm just like afraid, really. I have social anxiety that is like to the max right now. I don't like going out to the store generally. Add in a pandemic, it doesn't make it any easier. So
totally fair considering this current state.
That holds the Instructable sketchbook, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I think they're the exact same size as Field Notes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, all those pocket notebooks are the same size.
Yeah,
it would have been perfect for you to have done that for next week. Hashtag foreshadowing.
Yeah. Or maybe I'll have a video out for next week. Bum, bum, bum. Ooh, maybe. I am going to do a video of it later. I haven't decided what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do a video. I'm going to put it in this order, and then I'll have the stuff that I want to finish it, because I want to try and dye some leather a bit darker, just to see how it turns out. So that's in the cart, waiting. But yeah. I just gotta press the button. I just gotta press the button, and then I've never been to the store before, so then I'll have to find it, and it's in a back alley. Anyways, it's just my anxiety. That's all. So the other thing I did is I released a poker chip display video. To reclaimed. Go ahead.
Was for someone or for you? Do you collect poker chips? Oh no, you did. You did.
Yeah, it was a gift for my dad. It was his birthday in August, so I actually gave it to him back then. But the whole COVID situation made it so that I haven't been to his house. And if you listen to my little mini podcast on Patreon, it kind of explains a little more about it. But basically, I wasn't able to get the shots that I wanted to finish the video, but I did. I just went, you know what? I can only wait so long. I started the build in 2019. I need to have it out. And I need to have it out in apparently 2 years. It was a year and a half. But the interesting... Go ahead. No? Nothing?
I don't think anyone was going to say anything. Keep going.
I was going to say, you mean to tell me that you don't film, edit, and post a video in 1 week? What is this? You lie.
I think the fastest I've actually done it is 1 day, and it's my simple bandsaw fence. I filmed, edited, and posted that all in one evening from 8 o'clock till midnight.
Nice.
Wow.
I built the project, filmed, edited, everything. Had it out at the end of the day. Fun project. Go check it out. But the interesting part about this is that it actually, in 2019, started out as what was going to be a beer cap plinko machine. So you have a beer opener at the top, and it has a bunch of nails sticking in it. And I designed this whole thing up in SketchUp, and basically once I had started making it as a real object, I felt like that everything I'd done in SketchUp just didn't feel right. And I just kind of felt like sometimes 3D modeling, you can't get a real feel for things until you have them in your hands. And I was just wondering what your guys' thoughts were on 3D modeling.
Yeah, so I had a very interesting experience with that in making the puzzle box. So it's actually very timely that you mentioned that, because I actually got a comment on that video today that made me think a lot about this. And the comment was asking about designing those 4 movements that opened up the box. And he was saying oh, this is really cool, but I'm curious how you design those movements, because you didn't really show it. And the reason I didn't is because it would be incredibly difficult. I don't know how I would show it, because it was such a the order of events was so sort of organic in a way. Basically I had sort of an idea even before I knew what the box wanted to look like. I had an idea of the first 2 movements. I was I want something that goes up and to the side. And so how can we put elements on the box that allows that to happen? So something that can move, but when it moves in that way, it doesn't look out of place. So it's still sort of concealed in the box. And eventually I got to a very, very basic concept sketch. But at a certain point, and honestly pretty early in the design process, I felt I needed to hop into Fusion 360 to really flesh out the aesthetic even more than the functional locking part. And that's just how my process worked for that project.
When you talk about you had a concept sketch, are you talking a physical drawing?
Yeah. So I had in my, I don't know, 11 by 9 sketchbook. It was, I actually show it briefly in the video, but just essentially all this really was at that point, like the movements that I wanted was like an outline of the box and then arrows showing how I wanted things to move. And then that kind of allowed me that made it like less totally in my head and being like, okay, so like I'm going to have pieces that look at least something like this. So I find that like sketching for me is really important to take something from like a total pie in the sky project and being like, okay, this is something that could be possible. But I don't tend to do a ton of detailed design sketching on paper. Actually, okay, I'll let one of you guys go because I need to think a bit more on that. It really actually depends on the project.
I love 3D modeling. I don't know why. I do it, but then I never actually like use the model, if that makes sense. So I think it's just because I can like make something when I'm not in my shop. Like I can get my ideas out. But generally I would sketch something on paper and then sort of finalize it in 3D modeling.
Right.
Interesting perspective, because I know you spend a lot of time on the computer, but not a lot of time at like where you're free to do whatever you want, but you're kind of constrained to being not at your workshop. So that's an interesting perspective to have, to like you enjoy doing the 3D modeling because you feel like you're making.
I don't know why, but I feel like I'm making, but it also gives me, it like lets me get some ideas out and make sure they're going to work the way I want them to, and that things are going to fit how I want them to.
Yeah, and I feel very similarly with that. Like there's so much problem solving that I find you can do in the 3D modeling process, because it's easy when you sketch something on paper to like force things to fit, especially if you can't draw perfect perspective. Being like, oh yeah, these things will all work together. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's why I find sketching as a better tool for like brainstorming in a way. It's like, this is kind of like sort of how I want it to look in a very basic level, or in terms of carpentry planning. So that's something I was doing on this more recent project. It's like it's a relatively simple woodworking project. So at this point, I'm like, it's not even worth it to make a Fusion 360 model. Like this is something that I might as well just sketch on paper, because all I need to do is like make a very basic cut list from this.
Yeah.
And maybe decide between like 3 or 4 options as to which thing is the best.
Well, that's also another thing that I use it for as well, is trying to work out how much material I need. So I recently just designed my new workbench. And then I took all those pieces to make a cut list to see if I had enough plywood that I needed to make it. Yeah, in saying that too, I could move things around and see how I want the drawer layout to be and all that sort of stuff. So,
and you can probably change things slightly and go, if I make this, 1 inch shorter here, or I don't know, however many millimeters that is in Australian, then I could actually say, baby. Yeah, it was. I was just trying to be an idiot because Canada's metric too. If you did that, you might find sometimes that you're like, I could fit this onto one less sheet of plywood or something.
Yeah, 100%.
By making like a tiny change that doesn't actually change anything, you go, it's like if I made something that was 49 inches long. You're like, if you make it 48, it'll fit on a 4x8 sheet. So don't be an idiot, right? Like,
yeah. Well, that's another thing. Another thing too is that, like, even so, as I said, I don't use it as a final design. I just use it to like get the idea out and all that sort of stuff. So when I designed it, and I was talking to you guys through the week about it, was instead of making everything 18 millimeters thick, which is what plywood would be for me, new 18 to 19 millimeters, I just made everything 20 because it was so much easier just to, when I make the model, just add 20 mil onto it instead of adding 18 and trying to do the maths and all that sort of stuff. So I did that, and then I thought, well, all the pieces are going to be 2 millimeters longer on every edge, so that's like 4 millimeters overall and all that sort of stuff. And then I realized afterwards, though, that once I put that onto a plywood panel, that allows for my saw curve. Oh. So in a way, I actually didn't stuff up. So
in a way, you stuffed up, but it worked out.
Yeah. So
that's I think is one of the dangers of relying too much on 3D modeling, is that you can lose sight of reality. And I think it's like on that, it's really important to like I like if I'm designing on my computer and designing something around the real world, I'll like go back and forth a lot to make sure I'm not falling into like a trap. And like you cut all the pieces out and you realize like, wait a second, like there's no legs holding this up. It's just floating in the air. Because it can happen, right? And that's not really traditionally how things are designed. It's still a relatively new tool for making, if we're talking woodworking, for making like pieces of furniture.
Right. So the cabinets that I've been working on is exactly that. I designed them up. I even designed the closets. I'm building like a closet organizer. So I built my room. I built the closets in my room, and then I built these organizers inside those closets. And then I built them in real life, and I went, it just looks oppressive. They're too big. So I literally had to cut them down and make them smaller.
Wow, that's
both width-wise, so I had to pull it apart, and like lengthwise. I don't know, like two different dimensions I totally screwed up. They were 20 inches deep, and they needed to be, I cut 2 inches off that, now they're 18 inches deep, and they were 36 inches wide, and I made them 30 inches wide. And it's like, once I got them in there, it just seemed wrong.
That's something that Laura Kampf was talking about on, I think, the Maker Mom podcast. In that she can tell when things are designed like solely in SketchUp or Fusion 360. Like it has a certain look to it sometimes. It's like the person did not take into account the human. That, right. I mean, that's like the worst case scenario, right? Because so much of design is not just like being able to model it. It's knowing the proportions.
Well, and a good like example of that is her chair that she made on the CNC. And she talks about how much she's not good at designing. Like that's like her videos. Like, I'm not good at designing. It's something I want to learn. I'm going to make a chair. And she made the chair, and she went, the arms are way too like far away. You can't use the armrests, right? And she just went, well, that's a live and learn moment, right? Like, and you see it in the video. Her arms are not physically able to hit the armrests, and they just look wrong. And she mentions it, so it's fine. But it's exactly that. It's those times where you go, the proportions look great, but the functionality doesn't work.
Yeah.
I just had that with the shelf that I just made. We made it, and then it just looked way too tall and weird, so I had to cut it down. Yeah.
Did you sketch that? Did you sketch it on like a CAD program, or?
I did, and it looked weird in there too.
Yeah, just go with it.
So yeah. I want to talk a little bit about what your first like use of a CAD program was, because obviously people have been sketching, like as a kid you sketched out like what your house looked like you did crayon drawings of that. But let's skip a little bit to, in engineering school, my first time I ever used was AutoCAD. And we had a project, and we had to, like, end of the semester project was reverse engineer anything. Pick something, make a CAD model of it.
Yeah, right.
I picked a thumbtack. I fell asleep on the last day it was due. I ended up doing the entire thing in 1 hour, printing it out, because back in the day you had to print stuff out and actually physically deliver it. I was an hour. Yeah, I was an hour late. The TA who was supposed to pick it up got into a car accident on the way, and I'm not joking. This is what happened.
Oh my gosh.
So he didn't get, like, it wasn't like, it was just like a fender bender or whatever, but it delayed him. So I lived in residence. I ran over. I didn't know about this. I just ran over to throw my thing in the box, figuring it was going to fail. I got an A. It was my like first A in engineering at the time, and I was like, "Yeah, like take that, me, for procrastinating to the very last minute." But it really showed like you could really make anything you want in CAD.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry,
and you could do it very quickly if you need to.
So was SketchUp's 3D warehouse a thing then, or not?
No, that was nothing. There was no SketchUp. There was literally, back in the day, there was literally nothing.
Yeah.
So are we counting The Sims as a CAD program? Because I definitely made models of my house in The Sims as a kid.
No, I wouldn't say that.
I'm going to say no.
As much.
Okay.
Right, because I played with like the original Sims, which was Sim City.
Does Lego count?
Yeah, just like, okay, right, no. Yeah, no, I'm going to talk about like an actual CAD. Because like that's not...
So I was not totally being serious, but I think it brings up a good point, which is that, so I also, AutoCAD was my first formally learned program, although I did play around with, at the time it was Google SketchUp when I was like, I don't know, 14 years old or so. I don't even remember
I still had Google SketchUp installed on one of my computers, actually.
Yeah, so do I.
Google SketchUp, not SketchUp,
Yeah.
Google SketchUp. So that's 2006.
Yeah, and so that was the I mean, I messed around with it, but like I learned AutoCAD in a classroom, and I had a really great professor in that class. It was probably the single most useful class I took in university, and it wasn't just because we learned AutoCAD. It was also because he taught us how to sketch things by hand, and he taught us good drafting techniques, and not just like you use this line thickness for a solid line and you use a lighter line thickness for a hidden line. It was that like, if you have, like, he would draw a line on the board. This is actually a great exercise. So he drew 2 lines on the board and he had 2 students come to either line. And he said, okay, I want you to divide this into quarters, into 4 equal parts. And the whole class would watch how the 2 students do it. And one student would like kind of try to estimate the middle and then divide it from then. And the other student inevitably would kind of step back, sort of like gauge it with their arms and try to do it at the same time. So it was like perfectly symmetrical. And from that exercise, you got the like strategies for making things symmetrical, or like being able to draw things that are correctly proportioned. Like we did an exercise where you just drew someone's face for an hour. We tried to accurately draw someone's face. And it's like exactly because of the reason we just said, in that like just learning how to use one of these programs isn't enough, because you can still design crap in these programs very easily. If you care about designing, I mean, drafting is, you can just draft and just draw someone else's design.
This really makes me wish I hadn't slept through all of those classes. It was an 8 o'clock in the morning class, and I don't wake, like I now own, like, because of my job, wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning. But I remember I went to like the first class and they talked about like, how far away is that wall? And like he said, as an engineer, you're going to need to know these kinds of things just by looking at it. You don't need to know the exact number. Well, what you need to know is that if your measuring tool says it's 25 feet and you look at it and go, it's not 25, it's at least 30, right? Then you don't trust your measuring tool. You take a second measure, you calibrate your tool, you try it again, right? He said, this is the kind of thing you need to know if you're an engineer. And I went, oh, that's great. I really want to come to these more often. And then I didn't. But I got an A, so I don't know.
Yeah.
On one project, not the whole course.
So yeah, I mean, like I learned, like you, Grant, in AutoCAD, and I have spent hours and days drafting in AutoCAD and can do everything in it very quickly, and taught it to students and designed my own, designed my bent lamination tape dispenser in AutoCAD and all these other things.
Oh, wow.
But once I discovered Fusion, I was like, I am not touching AutoCAD again, because I don't want to mess around anymore with these lines and bodies that don't know what they are. Because the great thing about Fusion is that things know what they are and you can adjust them throughout the program. So I've kind of like, at this point, I don't really see, at least in my own personal projects, a reason to use AutoCAD. If I was to be working for an architect or an engineer and drafting a building plan, then like, yeah, AutoCAD is the way to draw lines and circles and arcs on a computer and make beautiful plans. And you can get all your blocks in there. But in terms of like designing in the way that I want to, AutoCAD is not really the tool I would reach for these days.
So I started on Google SketchUp, and I can't remember what my first project was. It was probably my first workbench, like my first video. But recently I've moved over to Fusion 360, mainly because they've gone to web-based with SketchUp, and I don't like that. I like to have a dedicated program. But yeah, it was very weird going from SketchUp to Fusion, because Fusion's so different in many ways. Like SketchUp, you could just get the measuring tape, measure out a distance, and then it would leave a dot, and you could then make a rectangle that's like the right size, sort of thing. But like Fusion, you've got to draw a line, and that's your measuring tape, and that's
yeah. So to kind of take it away from programs and what we're using, even though yes, I use Google SketchUp, I haven't transitioned to Fusion. I will one day, but for now, it's like you have to spend a little bit of time learning something to use it. But what I do know is how to use paper. And one thing that my mother taught me when I was growing up was if you want to like easily, quickly model something, is use graph paper. And what we would do is, and this is like her way of trying to get me to like change my room, because I didn't like anything to be moved. Everything had its place and it should never, ever be moved.
I just want to say real quick that I was the exact opposite as a kid.
Everything had to move all the time.
I would rearrange my room like once every 2 months.
Right. So my mother would try and rearrange my room once every 2 months. And I would, as a 10-year-old, move dressers back that like no human, like a 10-year-old who didn't have the strength to, but adrenaline gave it to me.
Just pure will.
Pure will. And she would be like, how did you do that? And I'd be like, I didn't want it moved. I'm sure there's other people out there who feel the same way as me, and there's probably just as many that feel the same way as Morley. But she would try and convince me to move around my room by she would put all the different things, and we'd make scale models of them on graph paper with like every little thing would either equal 1 foot or half a foot, or every little box would equal something in real life. And we'd have all the measurements, and we'd spend time measuring everything out. And then we'd make little models of them, and then we'd move them all around the room and see what would work best. And of course, what worked best is the thing that I liked, and it didn't change. But that's an interesting way to go about making something. Is you got to realize that paper can be really useful, especially lines and graph paper, in that you can force. If you don't have a computer available, you can force a lot of things to be done using just a grid.
Mm-hmm. And I've also like always wanted to try the thing where you like model your living space with a foam core, like an architectural model.
Yeah.
Like when we first moved into this apartment, the first thing I did was I came in, I took measurements of like every single possible thing you could in here, and I made a CAD model of it because I wanted to see like how big of a bed do we need, and I also just wanted to see like what does this apartment look like in a plan view. And I think that kind of just goes to show you like how, if you are messing around with like computer drafting or even just sketching, like one of the really important things to do is to go back and forth between the real world and the sketch. And that's how you can kind of get over, you design a chair and realize that like the arms are way too far away from your body is going back and forth. One of my internships, for example, like I worked for a civil engineering firm that did a lot of surveying. And so like we'd spend the day out at a beautiful home on the seacoast. We do the full survey, take all these measurements, and then we go back to the office and we draft it all up. And after doing that like 10 or so times, you would be like walking around a property, and in your head, you can see the plan coming to be. And you're like, I know what this is going to look like when it is modeled in AutoCAD. And it was this like amazing feeling. It was like you were walking around a video game. And it's something that you kind of only get through experience, is like going back and forth between those two mediums.
Totally. Yeah. And that's where like, that's the kind of thing where you start to realize how long distances are because you've measured them so many times.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, I would use 100 feet so judiciously as a kid and be like, oh yeah, that tree's 100 feet tall. And then eventually I realized, I was like, wow, 100-foot tall tree is really tall.
Yeah, totally.
I've always thought about designing my shop in like Fusion or SketchUp. I was going to do it in SketchUp originally, but just to move things around and see what would work better, because I think it would be really good to be able to record with me standing behind my workbench.
Yeah.
But I just don't know if I'll have the room for it. But then I just never got around to it because I'm too lazy to measure everything. And
so I've done my entire house in SketchUp.
Oh, cool.
I actually did my 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom to 3-bedroom conversion was done completely in SketchUp, and I went through like 10 or 15 different iterations on what might become the rooms and how everything, because I actually ended up making one bathroom smaller, moving a bunch of walls. Like I moved like 4 walls and built walls and moved a lot of different things around to make that work the way I one day might actually get to enjoy. But I did the entire thing up in SketchUp, and a friend of mine helped me, and I did the entire thing up in SketchUp, not realizing how to make models into like grouping them or whatever you do in SketchUp. I was doing it like I remembered an AutoCAD, which had nothing to do with how you do it in SketchUp, which like I was grouping everything, and apparently you make everything components in SketchUp.
Control G.
Anyways, all that to say is I don't actually have a lot of experience in either one of those, but I did make my entire house, which was fun. And my friend made his entire house and then submitted it as engineering plans. To get the city to approve his 2nd story addition. And he drew it all up in SketchUp, gave it to an architect who went over it and said, yep. And he paid the architect an undisclosed amount of money to say, yep, you did that right. You did that to code. Everything looks great. And he literally like had every 2x4 in his house. Like every piece of drywall is a component in his SketchUp model. And
that's insane.
And he got all the textures right and everything. Like he made his house in SketchUp. You could walk through it before it was done.
Wow.
And that's the power, I think, of computer modeling.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is incredibly powerful to be able to work out those problems virtually, especially if you like take the time to step away from it and come back and be like, oh, I didn't realize that body was floating in midair. Let's figure that out. Let's make that thing a little smaller.
Right, or that load doesn't go all the way down to the basement. Oops. Yeah, I think we might need to change that a little bit. That beam stops on the first floor and it needs to hit the ground. Yeah,
be cool.
That's the kind of fun things.
Be cool if SketchUp or something had like a feature where you could add in
forces.
I don't know. Yeah, forces. So like you could turn it on, and then so next thing you know that the whole house has collapsed because you haven't put a load bearing beam or whatever.
So you can do stress analysis in Fusion.
What?
So you could just insert gravity as a load, and then see what would happen. You can, like, I think even they're pretty like, you might just be able to access it from like the main toolbar, pretty simply.
But how do you put in like density and strength?
You just assign a material to objects.
Oh, okay.
So they have like libraries of materials, and then like if you make something plywood, it doesn't just look like plywood. It will have like the density and elastic modulus and whatever else of plywood.
But how does it know if it's bolted birch or Home Depot special?
Because they have like a billion varieties of plywood as well.
It's a joke.
No, but they do. Like it's really, and I think you can import more as well. Like it's really powerful.
I was going to say, I think you can also adjust it yourself as well.
Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, you can get all into, and it's also that. I mean, that's a good point as well. Is that like, I think that's the reason a lot of people who come from SketchUp like find Fusion so jarring, is because Fusion comes from Autodesk Inventor, which is for like creating like mechanically engineered parts. So it's a very different, it comes from a very different like methodology and background. Like a SketchUp in that way is much more similar to AutoCAD in that you're really just like drawing. It's great for drawing plans and shapes. More so than like assembling components. And
Fusion is definitely a lot more engineering sided.
Yeah.
And I only just realized now. So can you take a model from Fusion that you've made and put it in with another model? like you can in SketchUp with the yeah. So if you were to start, say, from the beginning, and every time you make a new workpiece in your shop, if you were to design that in Fusion first, that means that all you would have to do is bring all of those models into one thing with a box the size of your shop, and you could easily move everything around.
Yeah, and then what you could also do is you could update each of those models as you change them, and then hit refresh in the master model, and then everything would update because you're basically just creating a link to an original.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's pretty sweet, man.
Yeah.
I remember going through, the fun part was going through the Google SketchUp library and finding my cars to put in my garage.
Yeah.
Because for some reason, someone had made my exact model and year of Corvette. And there's a 2004 Chevy Corvette Le Mans edition. It's a special edition of it. And I was like, awesome. And I put it in my garage, and like SketchUp uses like a million different little tiny pieces. So that car model broke my computer. Because it just had so many, like, I don't know, lines and stuff that, like, when I put it in there, I could no longer use the model of my house. I went, no.
Yeah, I did that even when I did the flip top tool cart thing. I made the box, and then I got 3D models of a saw and a planer. They're not the same as mine, but all I did was change the model size to be the same size as my one.
Mm-hmm. That's what I did for my 3D printer enclosure. I downloaded a model of my 3D printer so I could put it inside and see what it was like. But even then, I messaged Vincent and was like, can you measure your printer from like the bottom extent to the top extent? Just like, I really don't want to build this the wrong dimension.
Yeah.
And was it the same?
I think so. I'm happy I asked him because the 3D model of the printer didn't have the spool holder on top, and none of the specifications of the Prusa online include the spool holder. So it was a really difficult measurement to actually find online, other than like very
interesting,
like anecdotal conversations on forums and stuff.
Yeah, I want a 3D printer so bad.
Oh, really? I didn't realize you really wanted one.
I do, but like, I don't know why. Like, I don't have a project in mind or anything. Yeah. This is the problem. So I can't like force myself to buy one when I don't have a project. Like, if I need something, I'm a guy who's like, oh, I need to make like X, Y, or Z, and it requires this tool. So I just go buy that tool.
Yeah.
But I haven't thought of a project because I think 3D printer is like, it's such a big change in how I would think that I would need it's a completely different thing than what I'm used to making.
It's kind of just more of a toy when you're not using it for something like that.
Yeah, like you could use it very casually as well. You could download other people's models and start printing them. You could also design things like they are wood objects and just glue them together, and that'll give you a sense of the tool.
I know I could make things. Like, that's not the problem. The problem is I don't have a reason.
Yeah.
And I guess I could use the like Jimmy ism of I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. But I already have a lot of those in my life. And I don't actually have a space. And before in the pre-show, we were actually talking about how like I hate wires, but I also like the fact that wires are predictable and wireless stuff isn't quite there yet. And I don't know where I would put a 3D printer that isn't already covered in wires going everywhere. And it would just frustrate me.
You mean the one wire it takes?
Yeah, that's one more than cord. It's one more than I already have.
Grant's at his tipping point.
I'm at my tipping point. literally at it. I'm not joking.
Yeah.
Call Malcolm Gladwell. He needs to interview me.
I don't know who that is.
He wrote a book called The Tipping Point.
Oh, okay. Cool.
And I think on that, like, there are so many other ways to design things that don't necessitate going into like 3D modeling programs in terms of just like prototyping or laying out masking tape on the floor when you want to figure out if a piece of furniture should go somewhere. That is so useful as an exercise.
That is my dad's way of doing things. Totally.
Yeah.
He's like, lay out some masking tape. Let's go. Let's see what this wall will look like. And it's like, okay, Dad. It's like, masking tape's not free, man. I'll do it up on a computer. It's free on the computer.
It's way cheaper than building something the wrong size and then having to redo it.
Yeah, okay.
You can't argue with that.
Yeah, unless you buy the cheap stuff from the dollar store. Like, masking tape is so damn expensive here.
Yeah,
I hate cheap masking tape. It's so frustrating when it just you can't even pull off one circumference worth before it rips.
For sure. Yeah, I bought a roll of what's the frog one, the green one?
Frog tape.
Yeah.
It was like $19 for one roll.
Yeah, frog tape's expensive, but the case alone is worth it because it makes it like I just keep those cases forever, and then I get other tape and put it in there.
Yeah, mine didn't even come with a case.
Oh my god, you're done.
$19 for just the roll. Yeah, crazy. All right, anything else we want to talk about before we move on?
We didn't really touch on we didn't really touch on my favorite part of Fusion, which is the parametric modeling, but.
We've talked about that before.
We have. And I will say that it is reason enough to dive into Fusion because it blows your world
any other program that has parametric modeling.
Yeah, although I don't know of any off the top of my head that are like widely used. I mean,
I don't either. I just don't want to like.
Among the ones we've talked about so far, like SketchUp and AutoCAD don't.
Yeah, and paper doesn't. Fucking paper. Oh, can we get some paper? And can we make it parametric paper, please?
This is almost like embarrassing to say, but do you guys ever have those moments where you do something stupid when you're making something physically and you're like, oh, I just wish there was an undo button in real life? And especially if you've been doing a lot of work on the computer and your knee-jerk reaction is like, oh, I can just undo that. And you're like, oh, wait, no, I can't.
Right. Like when someone like takes a fish and throws it into the water.
Yeah. Just go back in time 5 seconds.
Yeah, totally. Just undo, put it back. Yeah, I totally Control Z. I've said in the real world. I've said Control Z, and it didn't work. It didn't work at all.
Although for things like bending wire sculptures, sometimes you kind of can do that because if you remember exactly what you did to get it that way, if you just do it in reverse, it's going to go back. But it's a matter of remembering that.
And waking the wire.
Yeah, you can only do that a few times.
Yeah,
it's not like the computer where you can control Z, Control Y, Control Z, Control Y for the rest of your life.
What's Control Y?
Redo.
Oh, I never use Redo.
Yeah.
So before we move on, is there any other programs you guys use for modeling or like design?
I like doing it on paper, and I've been really like one of my goals with why I made this leather sketchbook cover that I was talking about is I want to carry one with me so when I have an idea, I can at the very least write the idea down because I found I'm not very good at going back to my phone to find the ideas, but I do look back at my sketchbooks. But at best I can take it and put in a little like drawing. And I've seen a couple like Jimmy Dressa did this great little lounge chair where he showed the sketch he had in his sketchbook and he turned that into reality. And I just went, wow, that like, I want to do that and I want to carry a book to do that. And that's why I want to make, that's why I made this little leather sketchbook holder is hopefully I'll start carrying this around.
Yeah. As Shia LaBeouf said, just do it.
Yeah, Nike said that first, though.
Just say it. Great. Cool. All right, let's move on to Clampmendations then.
Clampmendations. So my recommendation this week...
Hang on, before you go on, what the hell was that?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about.
You didn't hear it?
No.
No, I don't know. Don't worry, keep going.
Just you.
So my recommendation for this week is is a great video that was using combined a SketchUp and used the SketchUp or a sketch drawing. I don't know what it was that he actually used, but used a 3D modeling as the transitions in his video. It's from Bob's Wood Stuff. He made a saw case for his Japanese pull saws, and I really liked the transitions he used. Combine that with the funny walk that he did at the start, and it made a great video.
Cool. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, yeah. Well, this week I am going to Clampmendation, a TV show. It was on BBC, apparently. I don't know. I found it online. It's called Inside Men. It only goes for 4 episodes, and which was very disappointing because they lined it up like it was meant to keep going, and then it just sort of stopped. But it kind of ends. But yeah, it was a really good show. It's sort of like the movie Inside Man, but it's TV series.
But it's like plural.
Yeah, because there's men that do it instead of just one man.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a heist story.
Yeah, it's a heist story.
I love those.
The UK, I think. British television drama series. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it was cool.
I have another TV series to clamp mend this week. Eden and I just finished the season finale of Bridgerton, and I gotta admit, so like I don't like watching trailers, and a lot of times when we're scrolling through Netflix, she'll like pause in a trailer, and I'll be like, I don't want to watch this. Can we just move on? And she's like, this looks so good. Like we should really watch this. And I mean, from a trailer point of view, it looks like a sappy, sort of like Regency era British drama where like all these people in high society, queens and debutantes and all these other things. I'm like, I don't want to watch this.
Yeah. I don't want to watch that either. I've seen it, and I don't I'm for what the trailer. I was like, I don't want to watch that.
You've only seen the trailer,
right? But my wife was like,
so, but let me finish
I didn't think you'd want to watch that. No, totally. I'm agreeing with you.
She conspired with another friend to rope me into watching it, so I grudgingly agreed. First 20 minutes of the first episode, I was like, I'm not really feeling this. By the 25-minute mark, I was like completely hooked. It is just like full on drama. Basically like London high society around 1820. All these people kind of like in important aristocratic families, dukes and duchesses and lords, getting married off. And it's just like incredibly entertaining. I hadn't watched a show like that in a long time, but I got really invested in the characters. The music is really cool because it's all like string quartet covers of modern songs. So
that's cool.
You'll like realize all of a sudden that like they're covering like a Billie Eilish or a Maroon 5 song or something. And you're like, oh wait, I know this song.
That's weird.
Yeah, so it's directed by Shonda Rhimes, who's done a lot of very successful shows like Grey's Anatomy and some other things. So, but I would just say, considering our listener base, don't write it off because as many millions of other people, I think, are finding out, it is like a really, really good show. And in the same way that like Borat is not escapism at all, the most recent Borat that came out, this thing is just like pure escapism. And if you're trying to like get a distraction from all the events happening in the world right now, Bridgerton is a good way to go. It's on Netflix.
Yeah, that's all right.
If I'm gonna like since you two gave TV shows to watch, I'm gonna also give a secondary recommendation to watch The Queen's Gambit.
Yeah, that's really good.
It was actually really good. Yeah. It was really good.
I was really into the Queen stuff or royal family stuff.
This had nothing to do with that.
It's chess.
No, I know, but she watches it.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I more meant that towards Morley's.
Yeah. I loved in The Queen's Gambit all of the like the way
Spoiler alert.
It's not spoilers. How they showed kind of like historical, they showed like famous cities in the 60s and 70s, like Vegas and Paris. All of the like clothing and the furniture and everything was really, really well done.
Yeah.
Oh, and Moscow as well. That was super cool.
I don't know if anyone else is like me, but I'm constantly searching in the background to find the car that they forgot to like the 2010 Chevy Cruze drives by, and they're like, got that one in the background. That's my job when I watch films like this or TV shows like this.
Yeah, right.
And I didn't see one, but I'm sure
now that you've said that, that's going to be my new thing.
Oh yeah, like
it was really easy in The Boys because you'd be like, oh, there's like a Toronto bus.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a place they forgot to scrub out like City of Toronto.
Yeah. So am I weird and alone in this? But when I see different cars, I'll literally just say them out loud to my wife. I'll be like, Pontiac Fiero. Like, I'm just a weirdo. Am I a weirdo? Am I like the one who goes like BMW?
But between the three of us, I would say yes. But as a car guy, no.
But you're a car guy.
I don't know what cars are, but I like cars, but I don't know what they all are. Like I can't. I'm not going to watch a movie and know what every car is in the scenes.
I don't know what every car is. I know what BMWs are. I know what Corvettes are. I know what the cars I owned are. Yeah, that's it.
If there was like a 50 Merc or something, I'd say, oh, that's a 50 Merc. Yeah,
right.
But like something I like and know, but yeah,
cool. Well, so cool. Let us know if I'm weird or not. I'd appreciate knowing.
Sweet. All right. Let's thank our Patreon supporters. Yeah. Our top level F-Clamp supporter gets a shout out. That is Leroy from Big Rock Timberworks. And if you want to support us on Patreon, it is patreon.com/clamp. We're not asking you to support us, but we appreciate it very muchly. If you do decide to become a Patreon, you get a sweet key tag that's made by our one and only Morley Kurt. And the bonus content of a pre-show, if we do one, mainly we do, but we always do an after show, so you always have access to that. And I think that's it for that one. Usually,
and I want to say one thing. Yeah. Sorry, I schedule the pre-show to come out 1 minute before the show gets released, and I schedule the after show to come out at the exact same time as the show. But I always schedule the pre-show to come out 1 minute before, so that you can listen to the pre-show before you listen to the show.
Oh, well, aren't you fancy?
It's 2:00 in the morning Eastern Standard Time, but that's like sometime in the Australian outback is a normal time to listen to.
It's 5 p.m.
Well, that's a normal time. That would make it so in your podcast player, the pre-show would, depending on how Patreon puts out, how quickly it puts out.
Yeah.
Might make it so that it comes out before the show. So if it's on autoplay, it would all do it in the right order.
That's what my goal is. And I'm not joking. I do it every single time. I schedule them all. So if anyone has ever noticed, you're welcome.
Also, in saying that too, people that haven't checked out Patreon, our pre-show and after show actually like flow as well. So the pre-show, I don't cut anything out. It's literally where I cut the pre-show to finish is where the next episode is where the episode actually starts. So, the music plays before the episode, but if you were to listen to the pre-show, the show, it's literally just us talking the whole time. It's no cutting or anything. You don't miss.
Anyway. We're au naturel, baby.
Yeah. So also too, if Patreon's not your thing, which we understand, we love everyone's support no matter where you'd like to support us. You can leave us a review and Morley would usually read it out, but we don't have one this week. So back at the beginning, we did a tip. I don't remember what it was. And also you could just follow us on Instagram and give us some love there, comment on some posts or like them or whatever you feel like doing. And yeah, so I also like to thank TF Turning for the theme song, which is the beginning and end of every episode. And I think that's it. Any other business before we move on?
None from me.
No. I feel like I just talked very fast just then. Anyway. All right. So you can find Morley Kurt everywhere, including Twitter. He's very active on Twitter. And you can find Grant at the Grant Alexander everywhere. He's also very active on Twitter. Not really, but you can find me everywhere at Maker Mackie. And I don't use Twitter at all. I use Facebook and Instagram and YouTube everywhere for all of us as well. And collectively, you can find us on Instagram at Clampcast and Facebook. We have a Facebook group, but we have like one member. Oh,
YouTube.
2 members.
YouTube. Don't forget YouTube. We have a YouTube now.
Oh, yes. The podcast is on YouTube now. I forgot.
So
all
Google
our episodes
me, baby.
are So all our episodes are going to go up on YouTube now. We have been releasing them daily from episode 1. So if you want to hear our back catalog, you can go find that. And Morley,
Clamp.
What's up? Just Clamp.
Just Clamp.
That's it. Just Clamp. So search Clamp on YouTube. I'm probably sure we won't come up first because we have like no subscribers, but
search Clamp podcast, Morley, Grant, Adam, and I'm sure we will come up.
We'll come up. So you hear the back catalog then, and eventually we'll catch up on there, which should be cool. Yeah. And collectively you can find us on Facebook and Twitter. Also Clampcast.
Yes.
Bye.
See you.
Goodbye.
All right, I'm gonna do the theme song, and then I want to say something first. So speaking of, I said I wanted to say something first.
You literally just said you wanted to say something.
So speaking of,
Sorry.
speaking of Twitter,